Hey everyone, I hope everyone is doing well. In this video, this is the first day of the strength cycle. It started out with lots of back squats, and overall the day was extremely taxing to do, and I had, I think, one failed lift. I made a couple of changes, but I'll talk about those as I get to it. So you notice here that I'm starting at the monolift, and that's because the racks on the other side were being used, and I wanted to just get going and get warmed up. And I figured one of the racks would fill up by the time I got to my working sets, or one of the racks would open up, I should say, when I got to my working sets. Here I oddly zoomed in on the camera for no particular reason. I just forgot that it was zoomed in, so you get a little close-up of my 275 squats. But I did my warm-up sets here on the monolift. I didn't obviously have anyone work the monolift because I'm not about that life. I'll walk out my squats, thank you. But these, I did 225 to 275. Got some work in. Back squats were feeling alright. Wasn't feeling like perfect, but good enough to do my squats. And then by the time I got to this, obviously one of the racks opened up, so I went to do 315. Generally, I was extremely happy with how all these squats go, and you'll see throughout the sets that the speed on my different sets really stay about the same until I get closer to the fifth set, which is something that I'm very happy about. So my progression up with the sets was one set of 5 with 225, a set of 5 with 275, and a set of 3 with 315 before I went on to the 5x5 with 345, which is about 75% of my current 1 rep max of 455 pounds. The goal each week is to add 5 pounds, so this is a good starting point. I believe the exact measure of 75% of my best squat was 340. So this is a little bit aggressive with that, but figured I could be, because I figured my legs got a little bit stronger from doing all those front squats. Generally, I was right, I think. It's very difficult to do, but I was able to successfully do all the sets. One of the goals that I have, you notice that in between the reps that I'm taking quite a bit of time, at least more time than I would like to. Not, I don't think an excessive amount of time, but I want to be able to pop them off like I was able to do with the front squats with kind of a continuous set, so the actual time of the set would be shorter. That would kind of create more hypertrophy in my quads since they'd be kind of constantly flexing. It was difficult for me to do that just because I haven't done back squats in a while, and cardio wise it was difficult because the weight was heavier with that, and I tried thinking about doing that when I was in between sets, but I just had to mentally gather myself in between. Now, a huge positive with these back squats is that they aren't really bothering my hips. It's something that I had to worry about on the deload and in the past a little bit, is that my hips felt just kind of weak doing those. I think that they are adapted at least to doing these on this particular day, and hopefully that continues to be the case. And I think as long as I continue to do mobility work and warm up and do various things like deadlifts, then my hips will continue to be not a factor when I'm doing these. I definitely felt that my quads were being used, and that was caused my quads to actually be physically sore in the next couple days, which is a huge positive, because the more times my quads get sore, the more times that they grow, and if other things get sore, then that's not a good indication. My glutes were a little bit sore as well, but my quads got really sore, which for me is a good indicator that A, I'm using my quads, and B, I am maintaining my form in a proper way when doing the back squat. In the past, obviously it was a more back dominant and posterior chain dominant squatter, so I'd be a lot more pitched over and my knees would be pushed back a lot more, and I would just use my back a lot more, which isn't necessarily a negative thing. It just is not the goal when I'm trying to do a high bar squat, and something that I'm naturally predisposed to, and something that my squat will revert to if I'm not focusing on trying to stay upright throughout the squats. And that was something, really two big focuses when I was squatting, is to kind of have my head looking up like I was doing with front squats, to kind of give myself the cue of trying to keep my torso vertical, but also trying to keep my knees forward so that they are in front of my legs, and allows me to use my quads for longer of the lift, and that they don't shoot back right away, because when they shoot back right away, that is a good indicator that my back is taking over, which for 1 rep or something, if I'm struggling on rep, isn't necessarily bad to do or incorrect or anything like that. It's just an indicator that my quads have stopped being the majority of the force creator for the lift. So continuing here, and you'll probably notice there isn't a huge difference between my sets, and that's something I'm very happy about. And as I started getting into the later sets, things became more difficult. I believe this, and that was my last set of those. And even it was really until that very last rep where you notice any sort of like really struggle. Now I was very taxed after I did my back squats. My back had some pressure bruises, and I had I don't know if anyone else really gets those, but not really. I guess pressure bruises from squats from the bar. Those are generally pretty easy for me to get because I have really sensitive skin. But kind of that same look of blood vessels breaking on different parts of my chest and upper traps and areas that weren't affected by the barbell itself. I was getting those from the lift, so it showed me that I was trying very hard to do those lifts, even if they didn't look very hard, which I don't know why they didn't look hard, but who knows. These are some of my clean pulls, and a rule that I'm going to institute for next week of training is that my pulls need to be above a certain point, where the bar goes above a certain point to be considered a pull. These are essentially they're just speed deadlifts, kind of. I mean, they're clean deadlifts, but I wouldn't really consider them pulls. I wasn't pulling it high enough. They were all done at 340. I did 5 sets of 3. So when I do these next week, I think the benchmark is going to be my belly button, to where I have to get the bar above my belly button, which will mean I will need to decrease the weight. I don't know how significantly, but I will want my speed to be increased. I'm able to pull the bar to a higher point on my body. I think this will allow me to pull them faster, which will be more beneficial to me than to do these essentially clean deadlifts, since I'm doing those on Saturday, and it will allow me to do them a bit faster and obviously train my clean a bit more specifically than just generally pulling strength, since I think I get sufficient amount of that on the max out day, this week being the exception to that, for reasons I'll cover once I get to that workout. But on this particular day, that wasn't obviously something I had to worry about, since this is in the past and that was in the future of this video, if that makes any sense. And like I said, these were all done at the same weight, and they moved kind of well. I think they could have moved off the ground faster, and I think I could have done them all a little better, but I was definitely fatigued from the squats, and I wasn't accounting for that so much when I picked this weight. If I were to program for this first week again, first week of the program strength cycle, if I were to redo it, then I probably would have picked a lighter weight for this, but I wrote down 340, so I did 340. I'm kind of a robot like that. If I pick a weight, then that's the weight I choose. After I did those 5 sets 3, I had a 5x5 on push presses. These were the first exercise where I had a rep where I failed. These generally looked good. I was very happy with how they felt up until really the last rep of the last set, and I'll talk about that once I get closer to it. Started out with 135, and my legs were absolutely fried, so these were very taxing, the push presses in general. Went from 135 to 165 to 190. 190 is where I did my 1 set of 5 last week when I did push presses, and also where I did my last set of a attempted 5x5 in the 5th week of the strength cycle. The goal was to do all 5 sets of 5. I was not able to do that. I got into the last set and failed the very last rep. I don't even know if it was really my shoulders. I mean, I was just so tired that everything just kind of didn't work. But I'm very happy with my form. I'm definitely increasing the depth of the squat when I'm doing these, going down further and getting my legs involved into it. And I was generally happy with how these went. My best push press is 235, I believe. I haven't tested it in quite a while, so it might be a little bit above that. But this is a relatively high percentage of that, which is quite awesome to see. I haven't tried to extrapolate the percentage that it would be if this was 70% or whatever, because I haven't successfully done a 5x5. There's no reason to try to extrapolate from this number because it isn't done, it hasn't been completed as a 5x5 yet. But thankfully I was able to do 4 sets of 5, which is better than what I was able to do in the 5th week of the training cycle. And there was just that last rep of the last set that I wasn't able to get, which kind of sucks on one end, or on one side of things. But thankfully I was able to jump back and get it. I took like a minute off and then went back and redid the set. It's funny the way I had my camera placed in this video, see everyone trying to avoid stuff, except for Justin. He really doesn't care, which is fine. I much rather have people just not care about my camera being there than to be trying to avoid it, and because I think it can be inconvenient. And on this day, the only reason I had it placed behind me is just from the convenience of it not being in front, and it's kind of difficult to have it in different spots when there's a lot of people in the gym, because there's just other people trying to do stuff. I mean, you see both racks are being used. next to me, so that can become rather cumbersome to have it there. And this was an open space, mostly open. You see Justin standing there. He was laying down in front of the camera doing something. But let's see if this is my last rep of this set and how it went. Still going well. The key for me with push presses is just to get it above a certain point. Once I get it above kind of that sticking point of my triceps, I guess, I don't know. Once I get it above a certain point, I guess it's really my head that I'm able to really press it out in a powerful way, and it's getting my legs to be timed up perfectly. And this is a big difference from the past when I have been able to time these a lot better. I used to really struggle with that and essentially only push with my arms, which are very weak, and that limited my push press a lot. And as my legs get stronger, this will get stronger, and it should have a pretty good relation to what I'm doing with my jerks, and hopefully getting those a bit stronger. And so I almost fell forward on that one. And sometimes I lose balance, and if I struggle on a rep, then I'll go forward. Here you see Justin getting his shoulder work in, and seeing some of my reps here. So they kind of get blocked off mostly, but you can kind of see it doing the same kind of stuff on this set. The reason that I keep all the weights the same on the whole 5x5 is because I think it's easier for me to do so. I think some people struggle with that and they want to change the weight in Severium, and I think it could be potentially more optimal, if you have a really difficult set, to change the weight that you're using. But for me, I like the challenge of doing everything, and there you see my failed rep where everything just shut off. I did this quick single here and continue to get that all hunky-dory. Here, this is what I kind of want to talk about. This is one change I made from the first day from this 5-week cycle that I'm doing now from when I did the last one. These would be where I would do jerk dip squats, and these jerk dip squats would get very heavy. I didn't notice a big benefit from doing them, so I decided to make this a very light exercise where I'd work on essentially mobility, but also doing a close grip overhead squat and just kind of work on the jerk a little bit with the technique wise. With this particular exercise, I'm going to continue to keep it very light. I'll probably add 10 pounds each week and just do close grip overhead squats, work on the jerk a little bit. But I actually noticed a big difference when I was doing the jerks on Wednesday from after doing these, and I think it's something that's going to benefit me in the mobility of it. I think one problem that I have with jerks is that the bar is not far enough behind my head when I'm doing them, so then it becomes hard to stabilize it overhead. And I think working on my mobility in this area, or at least working on the cues of having the bar further back and my head down a little bit, will allow me to get into better positions when I'm doing the jerk, and will cause things to happen like what happened on Wednesday. If you look at my Instagram, you can get a quick preview of this before you see it on YouTube, and that is when I did a when I did a jerk where I failed the jerk dip, the squatting down portion of it, where my arms locked out but my quads failed, so I ended up almost doing a full squat, which is kind of unique. And these are nice because they're not as taxing on my body. They're good for a mobility function, and I didn't really get a benefit out of doing the jerk dip squats as much, other than just more strain on my body and just being more taxed with my workouts. So that part was quite difficult. With that being said, I think that's really about it that I wanted to cover in this video. Play some music over the last little bit. It's just more of this stuff here. I did 3 sets of 10, and I'll add 10 pounds when I do this next week. So hopefully I'll be able to progress in this, and who knows, maybe I'll be able to do a full squat jerk or whatever at some point. Probably not, just because of the way I'm built and my relative weakness in my shoulders, but you never know. So with that being said, I'll talk to you all on the next one. Hope you're all having a great day. Peace.